Welcome back to Pizza Talk, presented by Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt. I'm here with my little Poilon country miche pillow. It's not a real loaf of bread, but this is what the breads look like. But I'm going to use this behind me as I sit down, give me a little back support. And I'm with our two pizza Yodis, Brian Spangler and John Arena. The last time we all got together, our last segment, we spent a lot of time talking about your philosophy and a little bit of your journey and how you got to become experts in pizza and mentors to other people. So I want to talk today and really get into what originally brought us together as a panel at Pizza Expo, which is tinkering with your dough. The whole topic of, people coming in and asking, how can we improve the quality of our doughs to make our pizzas better? And so what I thought we'd start with today with each of you, and then you can go in whichever order you'd like. Tell us a little bit about the difference between the way you made pizza doughs originally when you first started out, whether it's 15 years ago or so with 20 years ago for Brian, or 50 years ago for John, compared to the kind of dough that you're making today. What are some of the changes you've made to tinker with it to get it to the point where it is so extraordinary? So who would like to go first on that one?
I'll go.
Okay.
I just had an interesting, this is kind of apropos. Yesterday, I started working with what seemingly was the same flour from the same producer, but it came with a lot number, and I was calling Nikki Justo to get the COA on it because I'd never seen this. The bag was different. It said it was the same product, but the lot number was a different kind of style of lot number. Uh-huh. So I called him up, and I'm like, I need the COA on this, and you change your packaging. He's like, how did you get that flour? What do you mean? Like, I'm ordering the same flour. And he's like, well, that's segmented for a different market. It's a different wheat strain. It's very, very similar. You're not going to find too many variables on it, but it's probably not going to have as much of the falling numbers will be a little different, the development time. And we also temper it differently for the way the bakers down here like it. I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that the same flour that you put, in this bag that you say is the same flour, you're actually milling this flour from a different farm for a specific, and you're tempering and you're treating it differently on your end to getting it to a different marketplace. And he's like, yep. I'm like,
and were you not supposed to get that flour? Did you get it by mistake?
He asked me, he's like, how the hell did you get that? We don't send that. We don't send that artisan flour to your region. We market that just for the Bay Area. And it reacts differently. The color's different. It's definitely a different strain of red winter. And probably also maybe the color has something to do with what the growing region or.
How did it work in your pizzas? Did it make great pizza?
It's a little softer. It's a little softer and it's a little more extensible. So we're kind of, today is day 3 with it. Because the first day it was partial. We were working with the previous lot of the flour I'm supposed to get. And it was kind of a 30% of the new flour. So the first day I couldn't really judge it. Yesterday was the first full day of only using that flour. Today will be day 2, 100% using that flour. But yeah, one thing we noticed initially was that it was kind of bucky, old baker term, where it seems really dry at first, and all of a sudden it just slacked out.
Wow!
After it absorbed everything. But the color was different. It's a little softer. It wasn't as crispy as the previous lot. So we're going to be tinkering with getting it back to the textural, our ideal of what, we want.
Yeah.
It's kind of
which is really kind of comes right back to this whole notion of how do you are tinkering. You have to make an adjustment because you've suddenly got a different flour than what you're used to.
Right.
And yet you have to, your customers are expecting the same quality pizza.
Right. So with the consistency for what we're trying to achieve, or our ideal is, now we're dealing like the products are always changing, and I never thought I would get this kind of reaction from from a flower producer. It's like, oh yeah, that's the same. We label that as the same, but that flower is kind of customized for a different region for what a lot of the bakers in that region are looking for. And I was just like, okay, I just learned something new.
So what did you do? What did you do to make it work?
Well, the first thing we had to do is we noticed that the development time was different. It needed a little more time in the mixer. So what we did was, I wouldn't call it an Autolease, but we did our normal mix time, checked the window pane on how it had developed, and then let it rest in the bowl by itself, covered it up with some plastic. Instead of doing just heating it up, because it was already coming up to about 75, 76 degrees, instead of heating it up and continuing to oxidize it by continuing to mix it, just let it rest in the bowl with plastic over it. Do a window pane test after about 15 minutes, check it, and then we started using the mixer to kind of do our stretch and folds on it till we got a clearer idea of what developed, because we do stretch and folds beyond the bulk mix. So it was just kind of adjusting with the hydration and adjusting with its development rate.
So you use two terms there that maybe most people who are watching understand, but maybe not everybody does. Is one, you talked about Autolease, which is really a concept that maybe pizza makers are using that came over from the artisan bread movement, that has to do with resting your dough so that you mix it less time, but you let it rest and develop in a resting mode, right?
Right.
So that's what Autolease means, right? It's the rest.
Well, Professor Raymond Cavell, the original reason he created Autolease, and it's been evolving. People have been changing the reason for using the process. But his original reason for creating Autolease was to give the protease enzymes time to get those enzyme packages to get engaged in, for a lower hydration dough to get the extensibility, because that's what protease enzymes do, is break down the complex bonds. They degrade the dough. That's why dough gets like more liquid as it just sits longer and longer and longer. But now we've discovered over time of experimentation that by giving time for everything to kind of absorb and relax, it takes minimal efforts to get development on the back end, right? So that's why a lot of people who have high hydration doughs are utilizing this technique, because you can get easier, rather than doing the old classic bassonage method of development with high hydration. You can actually just incorporate all the water and flour together, let it sit, develop it enough, but let it sit and everything get hydrated, absorbed, and then you can start doing minimal mix times to get the development.
So the other term that you used was stretch and folds, which again have become much more popular, and everybody sort of always was doing it, but and maybe even in the past everyone did these rest periods and these Autoleases without having the terminology. So when you do stretch and fold, what's the point of that? Again, does it have to do with replacing the mixing time?
Well, it's for multiple reasons. Rather than, because mixers will introduce oxygen into your dough, they'll oxidize the dough, which will take away color and it'll take away flavor, and it generates heat. But there's one reason to do stretch and folds. But the main reason I use stretch and folds is because I'm trying to do these long, extended ambient fermentations. And the longer, like, the faster you develop the gluten, the faster it's going to ferment, because it now has the propensity of trapping gas. So you can extend out the fermentation time, and by doing, like, just bringing it together in a short mix methodology, where it would be like a hand mix, get it just roughly incorporated to what I call shag, and then every 45 minutes allow it to relax, and then just come in and do letter folds in a tub. But that's slowly developing the gluten allows the fermentation to extend out to a longer period of time, which the longer the fermentation, the more flavor you get. And I don't have the refrigeration space like John, because I've been to his facility. I don't have that room to do all my dough. So because of my limitations, I'm adapting this technique to get the most amount of flavor I can in a 24-hour window.
I see. So, all right. So let's stop there for a second, because you've talked a little bit about techniques that you brought into your process through the bread baking background that you have. Even terminology that maybe most pizza makers don't know, like bassonage, which has
Right.
to do with the way you
That's
produce
my,
water. But
that's my
that's
deep
all cool,
favorite.
because you came in from a particular background that we've talked about in the last segment that we did. And these are things that you've applied, and maybe again over the years. So we're going to come back to you in a little bit and talk a little bit more about some of the dough formulas that you're using and how that's evolved. But let's take a little break here. And when we come back, we'll go to John Arena. And John, I'm going to ask you the same question. How has your dough changed and evolved over the years as you've learned more about baking science and craft? And we'll kind of compare and contrast, because you both come in through different ways. John came in from the pizza angle, you came in from the bread angle, and yet we're all ending up with great product. Okay, we'll be back in a second with John Arena.